What's going on? My name's Alonso. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm gonna be discussing the age-old question of how high should you rig your slackline in the park? Maybe this isn't an age-old question, but it is a question I get pretty often, and this really ranges from beginners to advanced because sometimes people don't know how high they should rig their line based off the length they've got. I'll mostly focus for beginners today with shorter lines. Let's get to it. So first things first, really, there is no wrong answer when it comes to the question of how high should your line be. There are only a couple of pros and cons and some things to consider really as well. Let's start with the pros and cons of rigging your line higher. When I say high, I'm talking anywhere from chest high to where this one is now to like just above my head. That is high for a short line. Now, when we get into long lining, lines are gonna be much higher generally just because you need to not touch the ground in the middle, but that's a whole nother topic and I'll make a whole separate video about that. So those that are seeking this question about long lines, it will come, I promise you. The biggest pro or good thing about rigging your line higher off the ground, like I have it here, is if you're rigging at a park and you find yourself really struggling to tension your line enough so that you don't hit the ground in the middle, this is a great way to do it. You just lift your anchors a little bit higher and now all of a sudden you need way less tension in your line and you will stay off the ground in the middle. If the park is really busy, clearly this park is not really busy, but if you're in a park, say in a big city where there's a lot of people roaming around, especially one that has kids, you're gonna want to, by default, rig your line higher. But the reason for that is these slack lines become kind of invisible, especially when people are just walking around minding their own business. They're not looking for a laser beam in the sky through some trees, and I don't want to go there, but let's imagine worst case scenario, you've got some people running, playing catch or something, and one of them runs straight into your line and gets clotheslined. Who do you think is at fault for that? Yeah, exactly. So if you're at a busy park, roll everything out and just rig your line high. That way, if somebody were to run across it, they go right under it and aren't actually hurt by it. Or if you're gonna rig it low, make sure you're very attentive to it and you make sure that nobody runs into it or kids don't come and tug on it and hurt themselves, because that's the last thing any of us want, is to lose access because of a silly little accident like that. Anyway, that's enough of my spiel on people at the park. Let's go over now some of the cons to rigging your line a little higher. Now there's really only two in my opinion, and they kind of go hand in hand. The first one is that when you're rigging your line higher, you're probably gonna rig it a little bit looser than if you had it lower. And for beginners, that generally tends to be a lot more difficult to walk, because when you put your foot on a line and it's really loose, it'll tend to wobble a little bit more than if it was really tight. So that's con number one, is it's gonna be a little more challenging to walk. It all depends on your perspective. You can say that's a con if you're just learning to walk and you're still struggling with small, tight lines. But if you're progressing from the small, tight lines and you feel like you're ready to step it up a notch, this might actually be a good thing for you because it's a little more challenging to walk and it'll help you improve. Now, the second thing is it objectively makes the line a little more dangerous, especially near the anchors. When a line is looser, and this has actually happened to me, what happens with loose lines that are rigged high is they have no tension in them. So when you fall, it's not like a normal fall where like the line kind of snaps and you like fall straight down. It'll swing with your feet still on it, and then next thing you know, you're upside down falling through the sky. I remember I fell really hard on my back that day, so it makes it more dangerous to fall off of. Also makes it a little more dangerous to walk near the anchors, because if you're high up near the anchor here versus if you were really low to the ground, you're more likely to twist your ankle when you jump off and if you hit the ground incorrectly or something. Now, of course, I'm being dramatic and these things don't happen very often, but I do want to put those out there. They are risks. That's everything I have on rigging the line higher up. Now let's go over the pros and cons of rigging your line down lower. I'm gonna start with the one con that I know about rigging your line low. The one con is that you have to have your line tight. You just have to have it tight so you don't hit the ground in the middle. Now, this makes it easier to walk if you're a beginner. The reason it's a big con is it makes it very difficult to tension, especially if you're by yourself in a park and you're trying to rig a little bit longer. It could take some work to make sure you have enough tension to get it off the ground. And it's it's kind of funny because, you know, if you're a heavier slackliner, you got to get it tighter because you're heavier, but because you're heavier, you're usually stronger, so you can usually pull tighter. So what I'm saying is it doesn't help to be lighter, because if you're lighter, you're generally weaker than a person who's bigger, especially if it's, you know, some good old muscle mass. Just kidding, but not really. Anyway, so that's the con. It's tighter to tension, and you got to get the line really tight when it's down low. The 3 pros, especially for beginners out there, the line is easier to walk. Again, if you're a beginner, the line is easier to walk. Once you get used to loose lines, there's really not a huge difference. In fact, once you get so used to loose lines, this is neither here nor there, but once you get really used to loose lines, a tighter line might be more difficult even. I've seen it happen, and it's happened to me as well. It's kind of funny. You learn on a small tight line, and then you stop doing them for so long that they just become really hard. It's like, what the heck? But anyway, they are generally easier to walk if you're a beginner, if they're lower to the ground and tighter. Another big pro, you can walk the entirety of the line relatively safely because you won't be very high off the ground the entire time. And the third one is that you don't need any advanced methods to stand up. You can just put your foot on it and stand. If I try to put my foot up on this thing, there's no way that I'm just gonna stand up. I would need an advanced method, like a sit-start method, something like this, right? Where I have to actually, I got distracted. I need a sit-start method like that, where I actually have to put in work to stand up, rather than just being able to put my foot on from the ground and stand right up. And again, this is more a thing for beginners. You know, you definitely need to learn a sit mount at some point, but it's really nice not to have to waste your energy on that as a beginner and be able to just stand up and walk. If you guys are enjoying this video and haven't subscribed yet, what the heck are you doing? Hit those buttons down below, guys. Hit the big red subscribe button so you know whenever I post. Hit the like button for the YouTube algorithm, and hit the little black notification bell so you're notified every time I post. I recently started a Slack Tip Tuesday. Every single Tuesday I'll be posting a short on a quick Slackline tip just for you guys. So hit all those buttons so you don't miss any of that. Also, want to give a really quick shout out to all my patrons out there. Thank you guys so much for the support. Every donation I get gets put directly back into this channel to make it a better viewing experience for all of you guys. So I really appreciate you guys. Thank you all so much. Let's get on with this video. Now, if you're a beginner and you're still learning to walk and you really don't have a sit mount yet, then the answer is really clear. You should rig your line really, really high. No, I'm just kidding. You should rig your line low so that you're able to stand up on it and be able to actually practice your walking rather than struggle sitting on it and not really getting anywhere. Now, you may need to bring a friend with you, or you may need to watch my last video on how to make your lines tighter. I'll put that up here in this video here with the thumbnail here, so if you haven't already, go check that out. That'll help you rig your lines tighter if you have no friends like me. Anyway, so that's how beginners should rig their lines: lower to the ground, tighter. It'll give you better practice sessions. If you're already walking lines and you can already do a mount, such as a chongo mount or a sit start or a drop knee or whatever it is you like to do, then I recommend rigging a little bit higher. Even if you're just learning the chongo or the sit start or whatever, it's really helpful to not be able to touch the ground. For example, when you're chongoing, one of your feet hangs down, and it's really beneficial if that foot is just out of reach of the ground, so you can get maximum practice on a line like this. Also, a little bit looser rigged line, slightly higher, will be a little bit tougher and will challenge you a little bit further and will help propel you forward in your slackline journey. So if you're past the ultra beginner phases, I recommend you start rigging your lines a little bit higher. Another reason you want to do this, when you start long lining, if you ever start long lining, those lines are typically really, really high, and it's good to get used to the feeling of walking not near the ground. With all that being said, guys, those are all my tips on whether you should rig your line low or high to the ground. Evaluate where your skill level is, and you'll know exactly where you need to be. That's it for this video, guys. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, love you guys. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see y'all on the next video.